M was walking to his seat. I'm standing off to the side, and M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. I was like, Death Row, what does it got to do with him? He said, hey man, Suge sent him a message. I said, oh shit.
What do you think of Eminem? Is that what do you think of white rap?
Really from the ghetto,
No.
and you really doing those things you rapping about, you talking about, I can respect that.
Right.
But if somebody else writing your rhymes, somebody else, is you telling somebody else's story, that really don't mean nothing to me.
He just lights the cigar, and it's the Suge. He light the cigar, and he trying to see what you gonna do. So Eminem, 50, everybody outside. This is when I knew Eminem was real. He's like, I don't give a man. This is when I knew, I'm like, damn, Eminem is a real 50 what's up?
Eminem has never backed down from a rap battle, no matter who stepped up. But the day he stood his ground against actual gangsters like Suge Knight, that was the day he earned massive respect in the industry.
I showed up.
Right.
And Eminem,
He came outside.
he came outside. He was ready to take
He's
on
from
whatever.
Detroit.
Now, one reason Eminem might not have been too worried about going up against someone as dangerous as Suge could have a lot to do with his former bodyguard Big Naz. Back in the early days of Eminem's career, when he had just dropped his first album, Big Naz wasn't just a bodyguard. He was practically Eminem's handler, making sure he was protected and handling all kinds of behind-the-scenes business.
At what point in Eminem's career was this?
This was actually, I went on tour with him during the first album. His album had just went platinum.
Oh, okay.
The week that I started working with him, he had just went platinum.
He wore several hats, man. Everything from being his personal driver, his personal assistant, his bodyguard, pretty much like his handler.
And of course, Naz had a front row seat to the beef between Eminem and Suge Knight, even claiming he saved Eminem's life at one point.
You see all these guys talking about Death Row, Death Row, Death Row, Death Row. So by the time I cut in, I step in front of M, I push the guys back, I'm like, yo, what's going on here, man?
But that's not all. Big Naz also witnessed every phase of Eminem's journey, from the struggles, and eventually their ugly fallout, which got so bad that at one point they almost killed each other.
The last time that I seen him, is we both had our hands on our weapons.
It got so wild that Big Naz even wrote a tell-all book about his time with Eminem, exposing some alleged dark secrets about the rap superstar.
Now that he has a medium, he's using the media and his music to bully other people around. So it'd be gays, lesbians, people that are handicapped. He's the bully now. My book, Shady Business, that's available on Amazon.com.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Big Naz. Plug that book then.
Yeah, Shady Business.
Yeah, I was kidding.
But again, the point that I'm making is he has gotten caught up in his own hype.
There's a lot to unpack, so let's dive in and break it all down. The beef between Eminem and Suge doesn't get talked about as much as you'd expect, but it's one of those stories that reveals just how wild the music scene was back then. It all goes back to Dr. Dre leaving Death Row Records. When Dre signed Eminem and later brought 50 Cent into the fold, Suge already had bad blood with Dre, so when Eminem and 50 started making serious waves in the industry, they basically inherited Dre's beef with Suge. And Suge being Suge, he wasn't about to let it slide. He tried messing with them on multiple occasions. Take, for example, the time when 50 Cent was filming the music video for Inda Club. Out of nowhere, someone yelled, "Suge Knight is here." That single sentence threw the entire set into chaos. Suge showed up with about 30 men, reportedly members of a Mexican gang.
Why I always respected Eminem, 50, and with us. So Suge came, he had some Mexican. We from New York. You ain't never seen a tattoo on his forehead. He light the cigar, and he trying to see what you gonna do. So Eminem, 50, everybody outside.
It was a classic Suge move, rolling up with a squad, trying to intimidate everyone on the scene. This was how Suge operated, always ready to pull up unannounced, flex his influence, and remind everyone that he was still a force to be reckoned with. Amidst this tension, Eminem was also present at the video shoot. True to form, Eminem did not back down.
This is when I knew Eminem was real. He's like, I don't give a man. This is when I knew, I'm like, damn, Eminem is a real 50 what's What's up?
Then there's the story from the 2001 Source Awards, which could have gone south real fast. Eminem was there performing with his group D12, and like any major awards show, the vibe was already tense. Normally, artists could have their bodyguards nearby at these events, but for some reason, the rules that night required bodyguards to sit separately from the artists. That left M in a vulnerable spot, which Suge and his crew didn't hesitate to exploit.
The way they had it set up, the bodyguards could not sit with their artists. You had to stand off to the side.
According to Eminem's former bodyguard Big Naz, things got sketchy fast. M ended up surrounded by a group of intimidating guys wearing red shirts, a clear signal they were affiliated with the Bloods, the gang Suge Knight was known to have ties to. Big Naz quickly realized something was off and sprinted across the venue to get to Eminem. He said it was obvious these guys had been sent by Suge.
And M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, you see all these guys talking about death row, death row, death row, death row. So by the time I cut in, I step in front of M, I push the guys back. I'm like, yo, what's going on here, man? I was like, death row, what does it got to do with him? He said, hey, man, Suge sent him a message.
Things between Suge Knight and Eminem escalated to a whole new level during a crazy incident in Hawaii. According to Eminem's former bodyguard Big Naz, there was some serious intel that Suge had plans to harm Eminem during an event that was supposed to be nothing more than a casual getaway. But this wasn't just some vague low-key threat. Apparently, Suge sent more than 50 of his guys all the way from Los Angeles to Hawaii. Their goal was to disrupt what should have been a relaxed gathering with Eminem, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre. What was supposed to be a peaceful vacation turned into anything but. The entire vibe flipped the moment they touched down. Instead of sunbathing and sipping cocktails, the group found themselves on high alert, bracing for a possible confrontation. Everyone involved, Eminem, Snoop, Dre, and their wives, had to gear up like they were heading into battle. Bulletproof vests became part of their daily wardrobe, and firearms were kept close by, just in case. The situation was so tense that even the Honolulu Police Department had to get involved, assigning officers to shadow Eminem and the rest of the crew for protection. Big Naz later opened up about just how surreal the experience was. "We thought it was going to be a vacation," he said, "but it turned into a huge problem. We had our wives with us, some people even brought their kids. The second we got off the plane, it was chaos. Honolulu police had to escort us, and we were rushed to a transport van with everyone, kids, wives, and all."
Ended up getting escorted by Honolulu police, man, and we had to gather up our kids, our wives, and had to be rushed to the transport van.
Besides the beef between Suge Knight and Eminem, another dark chapter in Eminem's life, one that Big Naz witnessed firsthand, was Eminem's struggle with drug abuse. According to Naz, Eminem started off as a healthy guy, someone who wasn't into any hard substances. But as fame hit and the stress of the industry piled on, what started as a joke, a little bit of recreational drug use here and there, quickly spiraled into a full-blown habit.
I think he started taking some of the recreational drugs as a joke, because it wasn't something that he had to do, because he was such a health nut, man.
Naz recalled that Eminem's drug use took a turn for the worse in Baltimore, where his assistant manager was constantly pushing drugs on him.
At what point did the drugs start getting heavy?
Baltimore, assistant manager at that time, who would constantly push drugs. Push drugs as in to say, hey man, look, take this will give you energy. Hey man, take this will do this will give you up.
Looking back, Naz deeply regretted not stepping in sooner because from that point on, things only got worse. At one point, Naz claimed that Eminem took 14 different drugs in a single day, a dangerously high amount for anyone, let alone someone whose body wasn't built for it.
At one point, you said he did 14 drugs in one day.
Yeah.
Eminem's addiction really escalated while he was recording his second album. According to Naz, Eminem was having serious trouble sleeping, and a lot of the drugs he was taking at the time were sleeping pills, ecstasy, and other substances. Things got so bad that Naz and the team had to literally watch Eminem sleep because they were terrified he might go into cardiac arrest or never wake up.
I remember him having trouble sleeping. So a lot of it was sleeping pills, so he can go to sleep because he had problems sleeping. And then There was some ecstasy. I was, man, because I literally would sit there and watch him sleep. I would have to sit there and watch him sleep to make sure he didn't go into cardiac arrest or he stopped breathing.
Now, if you didn't already know, one of the main reasons Eminem fell into this dark hole was the loss of his best friend, Proof. Proof wasn't just a rapper from Detroit. He was Eminem's right-hand man, the person who always had his back, no matter what. Eminem and Proof grew up together on the same block in Detroit, and if you've ever seen 8 Mile, you might remember Future, the character played by Mekhi Phifer. He was actually based on Proof. Proof was the one who pushed Eminem to take rap seriously, convincing him to hit up the hip-hop shop and test his skills at open mic battles. Without Proof, there's a very real chance that Eminem wouldn't be who he is today.
But then Proof said, "What up, M? Yo." So I said, "Proof, won't you come in?"
Despite being an underground legend, Proof never really chased mainstream fame. He stayed true to his roots, focusing on building up the Detroit rap scene. But even before he made a name for himself, Proof had a strange, unfortunate brush with fame. Years before anyone really knew him, he appeared in the background of Aaliyah's Age Ain't Nothing But a Number music video, standing next to Bizarre from D12. Speaking of D12, Proof was the mastermind behind the group. Around 1996, he had a vision of putting together a rap crew made up of 12 of Detroit's best MCs. The idea was to have a dirty dozen, but finding 12 truly talented rappers in one city wasn't easy. That's when someone came up with a brilliant workaround. Instead of 12 different people, they would have 6 MCs, but each one would have a second alter ego, effectively making them a dozen. This is actually where Eminem's Slim Shady persona came from. Every member of D12 had their own split personality. Proof became Dirty Harry. Eminem became Slim Shady, Bizarre became Peter S. Bizarre, Kunava became Rondell Bean, Swifty became Swifty McVeigh, and Mr. Porter became Con Artis. D12 made their debut in 1997, dropping an underground EP, and from there, the momentum started building. Individual members of the group started getting recognition. Bizarre was named Inner City Entertainment's Flavor of the Week. Proof won the Source's Freestyle Battle. And Eminem had just released his Slim Shady EP, which eventually caught the attention of Dr. Dre and changed his life forever. But just as things were taking off, tragedy struck. Before D12 became what the world knows today, there was another member, Bugs. Bugs was introduced to the group by his friend Swifty, and he was a key part of D12's early days. But on May 21st, 1999, Bugs was involved in an altercation in Detroit that turned deadly. He was shot multiple times and then run over by a car, killing him on the spot. Bugs' death shook the entire crew to its core. The vibe around D12 shifted. Things weren't the same anymore. At the time, Eminem wasn't even officially part of the group. He was more like an honorary member. But after Bugs passed, Eminem stepped back in temporarily to help out with some group obligations. What started as a temporary return eventually led to him fully rejoining D12. The group had a pact. If one of them made it big, they would come back and help the others. And that's exactly what Eminem did. After the Slim Shady LP went triple platinum, Eminem was one of the biggest names in hip-hop. Instead of leaving his crew behind, he established Shady Records under Interscope, specifically to sign D12 and put them on the map. With Eminem's career skyrocketing, Proof joined him as his hype man on the legendary Up in Smoke tour, a tour that was basically the weed-smoking Olympics, featuring Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, and a lineup of some of the biggest rap names at the time.
Of course they're gonna know when in the course is by the time they get 4th grade, they got the Discovery Channel, don't they?
In a sad twist of fate, Proof was depicted in Eminem's music video for Like Toy Soldiers as being shot and K-worded, a scene intended to represent Bugs' murder. Eminem later expressed feeling guilty for this portrayal, wondering if it brought bad karma. Despite the foreshadowing, Proof and Eminem remained tight until the end. Proof even stepped up as Eminem's best man at his short-lived second marriage to Kim, which lasted only 82 days.
Proof often shared the stage with Eminem. He was even the best man at M's wedding this past January.
Now, there's a lot of conflicting info out there about what actually happened on the day Proof died, and a lot of questions still go unanswered to this day. But let's dive in. On April 10th, 2006, Proof was out for a night of fun, as he often was. Old habits die hard, and Proof had mad respect for the city that raised him. His patriotism was unmatched, and that loyalty kept him close to the neighborhood, even though he was a star and could have moved somewhere safer, away from the dangerous company and environment. Instead, he chose to stay in the heart of the city he loved. It was an honorable choice, but ultimately a costly one. That night would be the last time Proof would enjoy a night out in his beloved city. There are numerous accounts that reshape the moments leading up to his passing, but one key detail is the place where it all went down, the CCC Club along Detroit's 8 Mile Road. Before Proof arrived at the place where the tragedy would unfold, his night had already started with 2 friends. They were club hopping, having a good time. As the night went on, his close friend Reginald Moore, aka Mud, messaged Proof to find out where they were hanging out. Proof replied that he was at the Coliseum, a gentleman's club, with 2 other friends named Mac and Chop. Mud joined the trio, and the 4 of them hung out at the Titty Bar, drinking, chatting with the DJ, and then moving on to another club called Rolex. They were having a blast, enjoying the night, drinking more, and living it up. But the night was still young, and they decided to keep the party going. This decision brought them to Proof's final destination, the CCC Club. By this time, it was after midnight, now Tuesday, April 11th, 2006. At the CCC Club, the festivities continued, leading up to the gruesome moments that would end Proof's life. Reports state that around 4:30 a.m., things got heated between Proof and a patron named Keith Bender. Bender was a veteran of the First Gulf War and a former medic who was forced out of the army due to a heart condition. Ironically, Bender was at the CCC Club to celebrate some good news about his health. Allegedly, the altercation between Proof and Bender started over a game of pool. The argument escalated and Proof allegedly knocked Bender to the ground. After this, reports say Proof drew a firearm and shot Bender twice, one bullet hitting him in the head. As Bender lay bleeding, a friend of his returned fire, delivering the wounds that would end Proof's life. Both men were critically injured and transported to the hospital. Proof was rushed to St. John's Holy Cross Hospital where he was pronounced dead on arrival. D12 was devastated by Proof's death, but no one felt the loss more deeply than his best friend and brother from another mother, Eminem. The grief pushed Eminem into a dark place, leading him to substance abuse that nearly took his life. He was consumed with guilt, wondering if he could have done something to change the outcome if he had been there that night. Circling back to Big Naz, he witnessed all of this: the beef with Suge, the drug abuse, the rise of D12, and the tragic loss of Proof. He was there through it all. But eventually, his relationship with Eminem completely fell apart. According to Naz, it all came down to money. He claimed that he was simply trying to get Eminem to pay him what he was owed, but Eminem wasn't having it.
So at one point, you guys are having money issues, and you're pretty unhappy with your situation. You've been trying to get him to pay you a fair compensation for your work.
The money issue wasn't the only problem, though. Naz said that after years of dealing with Eminem's chaos, he was mentally and physically exhausted. He wasn't just Eminem's bodyguard, he was his handler, his driver, his problem solver, his go-to guy for damn near everything. And after a while, it just became too much.
I was exhausted. Had I been there just to do, the bodyguard work, then I would have had more energy to be the bodyguard. Not only was I the bodyguard, I was the personal driver, I was the personal assistant, I was the butler, I was his confidant, I was his friend. I wore about 7 hats, man.
Things finally came to a head when Naz went to confront Eminem face to face. According to Naz, he had gone to Eminem's house to talk things out and demand his money. But when he got there, he was met by Kim, Eminem's ex-wife, who told him that Eminem wasn't home. Naz then turns around to leave when sees Eminem. Naz then tells him he wanted to talk, but Eminem wasn't trying to hear any of it. Instead of listening, Eminem lifted his shirt, revealing a gun tucked in his waistband.
I'm walking down the stairs. I show him my hands. I said, I need to talk to you. He pulls his shirt up. He brandishes 38, nickel-plated 38, I believe it was.
Now, according to Naz, this was the very same gun that he had personally taken Eminem to register. In other words, Eminem was flashing a weapon at the guy who had helped him legally own it in the first place. But what Eminem didn't know was that Naz was also strapped. He wasn't just rolling up unprepared. According to Naz, he had on a bulletproof vest, and inside his coat, he had multiple magazines ready to go.
But what he don't know, I got my 40 cal in my coat pocket, here. Not underneath my coat, but here. I got a bulletproof vest on.
Eventually, Naz chose to leave. He wasn't about to let things go that far. Then Naz decided to take things to court. He sued Eminem to get the money he was owed, and he didn't come to play. He told Eminem straight up if he didn't pay up, he would subpoena Kim, his wife, and even his side chicks to testify in court. And that was enough to get Eminem to cough up the cash.
We went through the legal I had to file a lawsuit on him to get the money back. I said, all right, look, man, I'm gonna need the money back. You go to court, need the money back, but I'm gonna have to subpoena your wife and all your side chicks.
But after their fallout, Naz went on to write a tell-all book called Shady Business: Life as Marshall Mathers' Bodyguard in an Industry of Paper Gangsters. And once the book dropped, Naz went on a media tour, giving interviews left and right, exposing some really dark things about Eminem.
They did take photographs backstage of girls offering their bodies to him so that they couldn't sue him for.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would do was take photos. Take photos of these girls in the act, so that way if they go to sue later on, hey, we got pictures of them. And you'll see some of the pictures.
Of course, not everyone believed him. A lot of people felt like Naz was just trying to make money off Eminem's name, stretching the truth to sell more books. Some pointed out that Eminem himself had downplayed their relationship, saying that Naz was never as close to him as he claimed to be. But others saw it differently. They argued that at the end of the day, Naz had saved Eminem's life countless times. He had protected him from real threats, from actual gangsters, and from himself. And if Eminem wasn't going to pay him properly for that, maybe Naz had every right to make his money another way.